Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. I'm Dennis Ward. The family of a man who went missing in Edmonton over a year ago never stopped looking for him. They found a body this past Friday with the help of an Anishinaabe tracker. But as APTN's Chris Stewart reports, it was not who they were looking for.
Elizabeth Bedard and her father, Leon Larviere, had been looking for their 42-year-old brother and son, Barry Bedard, since he disappeared somewhere in Edmonton in May of 2023. According to them, Barry had made the wrong friends, and they say they were told by Edmonton City Police that Barry had died, but his body had not been found. So they got a hold of Makwa Bear, a well-known people tracker with roots in the White Dog First Nation near Kenora, Ontario. A week ago, Makwa Bear began looking for Barry Bedard's body in Edmonton. The search led to the North Saskatchewan River, which runs through the city. Makwa and Elizabeth's husband found a body in the river. Alberta RCMP confirmed a body was found last Friday afternoon. An autopsy is underway. At first, the searchers thought the body was a woman.
I've had over 15 different people asking me if it's their sister or their daughter or their niece, a loved one. I've had over 15 people messaging me about their loved ones missing. And nothing has been shared with the media or anything about this body.
The body was decomposed, but not a year old. Now they aren't sure if it is a man or a woman. Makwa had to leave the search early due to a family emergency. But Barry Bedard's father, Leon, says he's grateful for finding this body because it will help the family of whoever it is.
I don't hold out any hope, but I know that these guys are good at what they do. He's given me a lot of hope, because I believe now when he comes back, he says he ain't going to stop until he finds him.
Leon and Elizabeth are holding out hope that the tracker will find Barry's body when he resumes his search in October. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
The Pimicikamak Cree Nation revealed the findings from their 2-year investigation of the St. Joseph Residential School this past week. The ground-penetrating radar search found what could be unmarked graves. Reporter Sierra Bettens has more.
3 years after commencing an investigation of the St. Joseph Residential School grounds, the Pimicikamak Cree Nation shared the findings with the public at a press conference. The investigation, led by Pimicikamak and the Saskatoon-based company Axiom, began in 2021 and concluded in 2023. The team used ground-penetrating radar to search for unmarked graves. Chief David Monius said the team's first task was to discover what the graves looked like. From there, they discovered anomalies in the ground that could signal unmarked burial sites, a total of 187.
And for us, it's quite shocking to hear that many, because you wonder how many missing children are there. How many children were actually going to school? And we had to not only search the ground, but we also had to search documents and try to find out where these children went to school.
The institution, also known as a Cross Lake Indian Residential School, opened in 1912, operating as a main Catholic residential school in northern Manitoba until its closure in 1969. It was run by the Oblates of Mary Immaculate through the Archdiocese of Keewatin. Pimicikamak member Sandy Robinson said about 1,240 students from 24 northern communities walked through the doors of the St. Joseph's Residential School.
In Cross Lake, between 1912 and 1969, 84 children died in the system. St. Joseph's, either through accidents, illnesses, and other situations. And there was a fire here in 1930 in which 12 students perished. 11 of them were girls, and one was a boy, all under 12 years old.
Chief Monius says the communities will conduct ceremonies to honor the children. He also called for the International Commission for Missing Persons to be a part of the searches. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
If you're troubled by this story, the National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for survivors and others who might need support. The number is 1-866-925-4419. This coming September 30th will be the first time people in Manitoba will have the day off to mark the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, also known as Orange Shirt Day. Making it a statutory holiday in Manitoba was one of the first pieces of legislation enacted by the NDP government under Premier Wob Canoe. Now the province is providing hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants to support events and activities that encourage Manitobans to reflect on the impacts of the residential school system. Premier Canoe announced $800,000 this week to establish the Orange Shirt Day Fund. It will provide one-time grant funding this year for projects and initiatives that advance truth and reconciliation by raising awareness of Orange Shirt Day and create opportunities for Manitobans to come together in observation, reflection, and commemoration. Canoe says he wants every child and family in Manitoba to have the opportunity to reflect on the legacy of residential schools, the children who didn't come home, and the profound impacts of that trauma on families that still exist today. The deadline to apply for that funding is August 1st, 2024. An elderly man from the Pimicikamak First Nation north of Winnipeg has some long-awaited news. Over half a century ago, he was convicted of murder. Now he's been granted a new trial. With more, here's T.R. Wheatley.
These lawyers from Innocence Canada are happy this day has arrived. Their client, Clarence Woodhouse, was granted a new trial 50 years after he was sentenced to life in prison with 3 other First Nations men for killing Ting Fong Chan while he was walking home in Winnipeg. James Lockyer is a lawyer with Innocence Canada. He's been working on this case.
That's off his criminal record, and he's facing a new trial for it. We're confident that the Crown will agree that he should be acquitted at his new trial.
Last year, Brian Anderson and Alan Woodhouse were acquitted of the same murder. Clarence's brother Russell was also convicted, but he died in 2011. The killing in question happened in July 1973. Woodhouse and the others always maintain their innocence and say they were forced to sign confessions. The problem, none of the men from Pimicikamak in central Manitoba could understand English, as they were all Saulteaux speakers. On top of that, Woodhouse and the others say they were assaulted by Winnipeg police. They also faced an all-white jury.
We talked to Manitoba about trying to isolate and identify other cases of wrongful convictions of Indigenous men and women back in that era.
Lockyer said back then the justice system was not favorable and often racist. APTN reached out to Manitoba's Justice Minister for comment, but as of airtime, their request was not answered. Woodhouse and his family received the big news before the long weekend. However, there hasn't been a date set for the new trial. In the meantime, Woodhouse has been out on bail while Justice Canada considered his case. He is living in Winnipeg with his son and 5 grandchildren. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Yukon government has confirmed there's evidence of cyanide contamination at the Eagle Gold Mine after an equipment failure last week, which caused a landslide. All 4 groundwater samples collected near the mine site indicate evidence of cyanide. Officials say a sample collected from a creek near the mine shows elevated levels of cyanide at 0.04 milligrams per liter, levels that could potentially impact fish. The government says it will continue to conduct water quality testing and sampling. The mine is located 85 kilometers from the community of Mayo, which is the home of the First Nation of Nachonayakdun. The First Nation is calling for all mining activity on its traditional territory to be halted because of the incident. Yukon Mines Minister John Stryker says the government is doing its best to address the situation.
We understand the seriousness of the heap leach failure at the Eagle Gold Mine on Monday, June 24th. We all love this place we call home. We all share a responsibility to safeguard it for future generations. That includes our government, Victoria Gold, and everyone else who has the honor to explore and occupy this incredible territory. Many of us have questions, and of course, we want immediate answers.
The mine's owners, Victoria Gold, have temporarily suspended operations. The company said in a release just prior to the government announcement that it had no evidence of cyanide in its sampling. Officials say results can sometimes vary. The Assembly of First Nations Annual General Meeting gets underway on Tuesday. We have a look at some of the resolutions after the break. Welcome back. First Nations leaders are set to gather in Montreal next week for the Assembly of First Nations Annual General Assembly. The agenda includes updates on First Nations policing and the investigation and audit of the AFN's financial and management policies. There are also currently more than 70 resolutions for leaders to vote on. One of the resolutions coming to the AFN AGA could change the way a national chief is elected. Last December, it took 2 days and 6 ballots for Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak to meet the 60% of ballots cast threshold. Next week, a resolution looks to address national chief election voting deadlocks. If passed, when there are only 2 candidates remaining, the chief electoral officer shall announce one last ballot will be conducted, and the candidate with the most votes shall be declared the winner, even if that candidate does not reach the 60% benchmark. The same resolution would also see a big jump in the amount of money a candidate can spend during a campaign, jumping from $35,000 to $100,000. Another resolution calls for an independent inquiry into the deaths of Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and Buffalo Woman. The inquiry would be conducted by First Nations commissioners and would have a specific focus on the Winnipeg Police Service and Province of Manitoba's initial and ongoing efforts to investigate and locate the missing women. The AFN AGA will still be taking place as a verdict in the Jeremy Skibitsky trial comes down on July 11th. There are other resolutions that call for addressing the chronic underfunding of education, a shortfall the AFN has identified as $28 billion, and one that would, quote, reaffirm the rejection and denouncing of illegitimate rights assertions of the Métis within BC, Ontario, and Labrador. There's also a call to rescind previous resolutions dating back to the 1980s in support of the extradition of Leonard Peltier to Canada. The resolution makes reference to the role Peltier is alleged to have played in the interrogation of Annie Mae Pictou Aquash and Peltier's public support of her convicted killer. Peltier's latest bid for parole on his 2 first-degree murder convictions was denied on July 2nd. The AFN AGA gets underway on July 9th. Yellowknife is ground zero for people experiencing homelessness in the territories, but advocates say there needs to be more supports, and the city says they're listening and hoping for recommendations. Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs brings us that story.
Georgina Frankie is an ally to the homeless in the Northwest Territories. People like Kathleen, originally from Kuluktuk, Nunavut, but for the last 5 years on the streets of Yellowknife, sleeping in emergency drop-in shelters. She wouldn't talk to us, but agreed to share what she knew with Frankie.
Our cycle is from the foster care
and then to the streets.
And to the streets. When you become an adult,
what else are you supposed to do? Where else are you supposed to go when
you're not educated? They never really properly educate them because they're not they're Indigenous.
Kathleen says she would sleep in a tent outside if she had one. So that's what Frankie's doing. She's helped build the first foundation of what's being called a tent encampment on green space overlooking the territorial legislature.
We're trying to provide safety for the homeless as well. Do you think there's a lot of support from the government? No? How can...
It's just like an adult daycare.
On June 26, around 100 people gathered for a roundtable on homelessness hosted by the City of Yellowknife. Local politicians, nonprofits, and community members attended.
Like if you're here as an ally, please help them. We need tents.
Mayor Rebecca Alty says it's an opportunity to speak towards what government and residents can do to help.
There is discussions with the territorial government since the first tent pad has been set up on Commissioner's land, so we'll have to see how that can go and what that can look like.
Participants had to answer questions like, if down the road in 10 years no plans worked, what would the Yellowknife homeless situation look like?
Have a seat open for Indigenous counselor. In Salvation Army, drop-in day sobering center, in schools, work with our younger generation to break the cycle.
Tina Wrigley is from Delaney. She's a mother of 4, a day school survivor, has experienced homelessness, and is training to be a counselor.
I knew most of our people that's on the street that's homelessness. Nobody talks about mental illness. Like, we come here, we talk about homelessness, how to stop homelessness. In order for us to really take care of homelessness, we gotta take care of them within them.
Wrigley pointed out the lack of Indigenous representation and homeless people at the roundtable and said their mental health needs to be taken care of.
Give me back my piece of land so I could make an Indigenous healing center for my people.
The latest point-in-time numbers are from 2021. There are over 300 people experiencing homelessness in Yellowknife. For now, a What We Heard report on the roundtable with recommendations will go to City Hall, the territorial government, and to the public. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
On Tuesday, Métis Nation Saskatchewan cut the ribbon on the new Dumont Lodge. The facility will help Métis children and youth have the opportunities to learn traditions from elders and take pride in their culture. Video journalist Rachel May was at the grand opening.
This lodge it's a building, but it's going to be a home. It's going to be a home for us. It's our first real home that we've built, in the Métis Nation.
July 3rd, the ribbon was cut on the new Dumont Lodge, located on the sacred grounds of Batoche. The new $8 million facility was made possible by MNS partnering with Urban Programming for Indigenous Peoples, a program implemented by Indigenous Services Canada to help deliver culturally appropriate programming. Vice President of Métis Nation Saskatchewan, Michelle Leclerc, says that this is so much more than just a building.
It's a home for our youth to learn about culture, language, values.
With construction finished, MNS spoke about their new program for youth, the Riel Scouts. The program will teach youth from ages 5 to 18 Métis practices, language, and traditions. MNS President Glenn McCallum says that with the help of elders, MNS executives, and citizens, the lodge will provide a safe place to learn traditions youth might not otherwise experience.
Everybody has a role. To be able to build good spirits as individuals, to be able to build good communities, to be able to build good cities, to be able to build a good province, and to build a country that we all feel that we're a part of.
The exact details of the Riel Scouts program are still being worked out, but the first set of scouts should be coming in early 2025. Meanwhile, the Dumont Lodge will be available for tours, rentals, and will act as the Elders Lodge during the Back to Batoche Festival. McCallum says the lodge is also a place to reflect on how far Métis people have come.
The reality of who we are needs to be recognized, but more importantly, in regards to the struggles that we have had as Métis people.
Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Manitoba's first Anishinaabe Premier is enjoying an extended honeymoon with voters. More on that after the break. Welcome back. If being a premier was a popularity contest, Wob Canoe would come out on top, according to new approval ratings data. 66% of Manitobans polled approve of the rookie premier's work so far. Sab Jones went out on the street to see what people are saying.
2/3 of Manitobans think that Premier Wob Canoe is doing a good job, according to the latest approval data from the Angus Reid Institute. The first provincial premier of First Nations descent is leading the pack against other provincial premiers for the 3rd time in a row. Since his election in October 2023, Premier Canoe has topped every approval rating polling conducted by the nonpartisan Public Opinion Research Foundation. And each time, his increasing numbers secured him as one of only 2 provincial premiers with an over 50% approval rating from his residents. We went out on the town to see what people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike, are thinking about his term so far. Premier Wob Canoe just got a 66% approval rating. He's the highest approved premier of all the provinces. What do you think of Premier Wob Canoe?
What do I think of Premier Wob Canoe? I like how he is involved with the community in Winnipeg and around Manitoba. I like that he's involved with the youth and really showing out and like being out there with the kids too.
Yeah, I haven't, to be honest, been following him super closely since he was elected, but I really appreciate having our first Indigenous premier, and yeah, it strikes me as a situation where we have a leader who's engaged with the community to a certain degree, and I appreciate that.
No, Wob Canoe's great. He's doing good things for our province.
That's awesome.
Go Uncle Wobby!
I'm one of the 66%.
Yeah?
I think he's done lots. I think he listens to people. I think especially with all the searching the landfills, talking to the families, like I just think those are promises he made and he's following through on them. Mm-hmm. I see he's got such a diverse cabinet. And I really appreciate and respect that as well.
Last month, Canoe announced the process for searching the Prairie Green landfill north of Winnipeg has begun, a promise he made during his election after incumbent Heather Stephenson refused. He and others in Winnipeg hope the search will uncover the remains of at least 2 First Nations women believed to have been dumped there after being murdered by an admitted serial killer. Canoe has also suspended the provincial fuel tax, which he says has given Manitoba the lowest gas prices in the country. While only 9 months into his first term as a premier, still a lot could change in the coming months. But for now, it's an achievement to be proud of. Sav Jones, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, Sav. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News this weekend. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. And be sure to join us on Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for your first look at the week's news. It's going to be a busy week with the AFN Annual General Assembly and the verdict in the trial of admitted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuitch, thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.